Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to unbox the newest product to come out for Arkham Horror the card game. Today we're going to unbox Return to the Circle Undone. I know most of my audience plays Arkham, but for those of you who don't, the return boxes introduce new player and encounter cards to change the scenarios. If you've ever played an MMORPG, something along the veins of a World of Warcraft or Star Wars The Old Republic, something like that, compare it to a hard mode in that game, in one of those games, you'll get basically the same idea. I had originally planned for this to be the summer campaign, but the release schedule didn't cooperate with me. So when I say I was planning on Return being the summer campaign, I'm being both truthful and slightly misleading. But you just heard why, basically. So the campaign itself actually doesn't come in here. The campaign itself is actually built in the Mythos packs that you buy over the course of the however many months it is. Although that product model is changing with Edge of the Earth coming out in October, I think it is. But, so like I mentioned earlier, this return product, apologies for the background noise, I'm getting something else out. The return box, like I said, introduces new encounter cards to change the scenarios up slightly. I don't know what it's going to do for Return to Circle Undone, make it easier or harder, but we'll find out soon enough. The return box also introduces tarot cards to the game. These cards can either have a good or a bad effect depending on which side is facing up. Anyway, enough musing on that. I will do Return to the Circle Undone on the channel at some point, so I won't spoil the encounter cards once we get into it, but let's go ahead and get this open, and we'll take a look at what's in here. And I brought scissors over for a reason. There we go. Okay. Okay. Alright, so there's the plastic wrap off. Come on. There we go. There's the rules insert, which we'll need that. Okay, this is going to need to go away. This insert I'm going to need to pull out, so that will hit the garbage bin. Dividers, which I'll need to reorganize everything. These are the aforementioned tarot cards. Okay, and then looks like we've got two piles, looks like we've got two packages of the encounter and the player cards. So I'll go ahead and I'll get these out of the way. I'll do a little bit of sorting off camera, but when we come back, we'll start off with the tarot cards. Here we are with the tarot cards. So these are cards that you can use for readings to give you various effects throughout the scenario for the investigators. Now, there are two sides to each. There are two orientations that you can have the tarot cards on. You can have it right side. You can have it right side up, where if the title's visible, you get the good effect. If you can read the title, you get the good effect. But if it's the other way, you get some kind of bad effect. So I'll go through all of these in a minute. But looking at the rules, it looks like there are four ways you can. There are four official ways that they've suggested to use the tarot cards. There's a one-card reading where you shuffle the tarot deck and reveal the top card in a random orientation. Its effects are active throughout the scenario, and you don't know what you're going to be getting. This just if you want a splash of chaos. Balance, a two-card reading for balance, where you shuffle the tarot deck, reveal the top card in the upright and the next card reversed. Then there's a three-card reading where you pull three cards in the upright position and reverse two of them. Or you can have a campaign reading where you shuffle the tarot deck and reveal one card per scenario in the campaign, ignoring side stories and counting scenarios with multiple parts as separate scenarios. Place each card in a horizontal line and upright, and then from left to right they apply to the scenario. Choose and reverse half of them, and this reading is ideal if you want your readings to have long-term consequences and force you to plan ahead. Now, I can see that being a little bit challenging with Dream Eaters, just because of the two campaigns that you run there. But I suppose you could do a campaign reading for that as well, and two separate campaign readings on each side, but that's just something else to kick around when we get to that point. But anyway, let's go through all of these tarot cards. Now, I do have some tarot sleeves over here in shop because I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. So after I talk about each tarot card, I'm actually going to go ahead and sleeve it. Just so that way it's taken care of and I don't have to worry about it later. Because I don't have to sleeve all the encounter cards anyway. So let's take a look. Let's go through these tarot cards, and we'll start off with our first one, the Fool 0. In the upright position, each investigator not defeated during this game earns +2 experience during its resolution. And then if you reverse it, you end up with each investigator defeated earns -2 experience during its resolution. Thankfully, you can't go below 0 experience, but combine that with an unspeakable oath, and that has potential to be very problematic very quickly. Next up, we have the Magician 1. Each investigator begins the game with 3 additional resources in the upright position. Reversed, each investigator begins the game with 3 fewer resources and can't gain resources during their first turn. So any deck that needs a lot of money coming into it is going to be faced with a problem. Next up, we have the Holy Priestess 2. Or the High Priestess 2, I should say. During the first lore test each investigator performs each round, they get +1 lore. Reversed, during the first lore test they get -1 lore. And it looks like we're going to have tarot effects for each of those stats. The Empress 3, it's the same thing for agility. Upright is +1 agility on the first agility test. Reversed is -1 agility. The Emperor 4, +1 combat and -1 combat in the reversed. The Hierophant 5, +1 will upright, -1 will reversed on the first lore test. Now we get into something new. The Lovers 6. When the game begins, each investigator searches their deck for an ally asset, adds it to their hand, and shuffles their deck. And then when you reverse it, when the game begins, each investigator searches their deck for an ally asset, removes it from the game, and shuffles their deck. So that seems like a pretty hard counter, I would say, to Leo Anderson, potentially, who does a lot with allies. But we'll see. We might see that in action. Next up, we have the Chariot 7. Each investigator begins the game with 2 additional cards in their opening hand in the upright position. When you reverse it, each investigator begins the game with 2 fewer cards in their opening hand and can't draw cards during their first turn. So as you've seen, card management is very important in the card game. So if you can't get at more cards, you're going to have a lot of problems. Strength 8. Come on. When the game begins, each investigator may play an asset from their hand at -2 cost. That'll be very handy for asset-heavy builds. Then when you reverse it, during the first round of the game, each investigator can't play assets. Yowza, that could pose a problem. Next up, we have the Hermit 9. Increase each investigator's maximum hand size by 3 on the upright side. When you reverse it, decrease each investigator's maximum hand size by 3. This seems like it's basically the Harvey-themed tarot. So, depending on which side you get, Harvey either does all the things or does nothing. And now we'll take a look at Wheel of Fortune 10. Once each act, when any investigator reveals a tentacle token, the investigators may cancel it and treat it as a 0 instead. So if you have a test that you need to pass but you get tentacle touched, this once per act says, nope, you can pass that. Oh boy. Once each agenda, the first time any investigator reveals an Elder Sign token, cancel it and treat it as a -5 token instead. So if you think you're golden, the Elder Sign might say, yeah, no, you're not. That could be dangerous as well. Might be a good reason, especially if you do a campaign reading, if you do a campaign reading, I could see a situation where there are some mystic cards that actually let you seal the Elder Sign. If you know that's coming on a campaign reading, that might be a scenario where you say, okay, I'm going to get something that lets me seal the Elder Sign, and then use that during the scenario. Next up, at any rate, we have Justice 11. Cancel the first doom that would be placed on the final agenda of the game. Okay, so if something's gone haywire, but you need like another turn or two to recover, this might be a way to help you recover it. But if you reverse it, the final agenda of the game enters play with one doom on it. So you either buy yourself some time or accelerate the clock to Doomsday. Next up, we have the Hanged Man 12. During setup, each investigator may take up to 2 additional mulligans. Then when you reverse it, each investigator can't mulligan or replace weaknesses in their opening hand. Resolve their revelation abilities when the game begins. Yuck. That could be very bad if you invert it, if you have to reverse it. Yowza, yowza, yowza. And it looks like we've got tarots here for health and sanity. Death 13. Each investigator gets +1 health. If you reverse it, each investigator gets -1 health. And then the Temperance 14, which might be a little hard to read from here. Reversed, each investigator gets +1, or upright, each investigator gets +1 sanity. Reversed, each investigator gets -1 sanity. Ooh. The Devil 15 looks like it could be cool. Each investigator has 1 additional slot of a type chosen by that investigator when the game begins. That's upright. Reversed, each investigator has 3 fewer slots, each of a different type, chosen by that investigator when the game begins. Now, one type of token I could see being useful, especially with these tarots coming out, looking at this one, is like a plus. It's like a plus slot. Plus and minus slots. So you have a token that for instance, let's take Agnes, for example. I might, or any mystic really, I might like them to be +1 arcane slot. So I have a token that says, hey, you're +1 arcane slot. Just a thought, anyway. And then similarly, if you have to go minus slots, tokens in the reverse direction. But anyway, now we see the Tower 16, which previously had been a very dangerous weakness. Each investigator chooses 1 basic weakness in their deck and removes it from the game. Return them after the game ends. Okay, so take a weakness out. And then if you reverse it, add 1 random basic weakness to each investigator's deck. Remove them after the game ends. Oh boy. So just plug up your deck with all the weaknesses. That seems like a thing you could do. Looks like we have, how many left to go? We have 5 left to go. Now we'll take a look at the Star 17. After an investigator reveals an Elder Sign token during a skill test, they may heal 1 damage or 1 horror on the upright side. Nice. But then if you reverse it, after an investigator gets tentacle touched, they must either take 1 or 1. Yowza. So I've had some bad nights where I've pulled a lot of tentacles. This thing in the reverse position would be very dangerous on those nights where Lady Luck doesn't like me too much. Now let's take a look at the Moon 18. The first time each investigator's deck would run out of cards, they may shuffle the bottom 10 of their discard pile back into their deck. Okay, so buy yourself some time. And if you reverse it, when the game begins, each investigator discards the top 5 cards of their deck, shuffle each discarded weakness into its owner's deck. Okay. Aside from the weaknesses going back in, that could be cool. Looking at these tarots, I'm actually really looking forward to playing with them. Let's take a look at the Sun 19. During each investigator's first turn, they may take 2 additional actions. Okay. I'm going to need more tokens for that. And then if we reverse it, during each investigator's first turn, they have 2 fewer actions to take. So that's basically like a time walk, where you end up basically losing a turn. Judgment 20. When the game begins, replace a skull token in the chaos bag with a 0 token. Swap them back after the game ends. This would probably be happy for everybody except for Jim Culver, who can already treat skulls as 0s, based on his special ability. But if you flip it, when the game begins, replace the highest non-negative token in the chaos bag with a skull token. Swap them back after the game ends. Okay, so a tarot that almost really seems to be pretty tame, I think. And then our last tarot card, as I try not to bend it in half. The World 21. Each investigator not defeated during this scenario may remove 1 trauma of their choice during its resolution. Very cool, but you can probably guess where we're going on the reversed side. Each investigator defeated during this scenario suffers 1 trauma of their choice during its resolution. So, either a healing or a very punishing card. And yes, like I mentioned, I really am looking forward to playing with these tarot cards in my campaigns on the channel. This is part of the reason the tarot cards were the main reason why I tried to hold the summer campaign for as long as I could, but ultimately I couldn't wait for it because return just got delayed too much. So I finally had to go ahead with regular Circle Undone as the campaign, but I will definitely be using these tarot cards moving forward. Anyway, that will do it for the tarot cards. Now let's get into the player cards, and we'll start with the neutral cards and the new weaknesses. Here we are with the new neutral cards. As you see, we also have 2 weaknesses that we're going to be looking at, but we'll take a look at the player cards, at the good cards, before we get to the weaknesses. So first, we'll take a look at Moon Pendant level 2. You have 1 additional tarot slot. It's also a 2 cost to play. It takes up an accessory slot. Each non-weakness tarot in your hand or committed to a skill test gains wild card. Gains 2 wild cards on commit. When the game begins, if Moon Pendant is in your opening hand, put it into play. So very handy if you're going for a tarot-heavy build. Which actually might not be a terrible thing with Lola now that I think about it. Next card up we have the Fool's 0, Unlimited Potential. 3 cost to play, 3 experience to put in your deck. As a reaction, when you play a card, exhaust the Fool's 0, reduce that card's cost by 1. And as a reaction, when the game begins, if the Fool's 0 is in your opening hand, put it in play. Alright, so once again, so if you have a very expensive deck, that might be a way to go to give you a hand with it. Now let's take a look at another permanent card. Observed, which costs 4 experience to put in the deck. Permanent, limit 1 per investigator. Before setting up each game, draw 3 random cards from the tarot deck and choose 1. Place the chosen card in front of you in the upright position. Each other investigator ignores its effects. Shuffle the rest back into the tarot deck. So that's something you would do before you have your reading for the entire scenario. But again, as I mentioned, there are 2 weaknesses that come in with the return set. So let's take a look at our first of those 2 weaknesses, Damned. Curse Omen. It's a permanent weakness. Before setting up each game, draw a random card from the tarot deck and place it in front of you in the reverse position. Each other investigator ignores its effects. So that's just for you. And then as we've seen some new tarot stuff, we have, of course, also have a new tarot weakness. The Devil 15, your shadow hungers. You can't play assets other than the Devil 15 while it is in your hand. If the Devil 15 is drawn in your opening hand during setup, before or after taking a mulligan, you can't replace it, it must stay in your opening hand. Yikes. Fortunately, it's a 3 cost to play, so you'll still be wanting to get it out of your hand as fast as you can. But anyway, that will do it for the neutral cards. Now let's go into the Mystic cards. Now we're going to take our first look at our Mystic cards. Looks like we only have 2 new cards for this return. So first we'll take a look at the Hierophant 5. Hierophant 5, your true master awaits. 3 cost to play, 3 experience. You have 1 additional arcane slot. Your arcane slots can be used to hold cards that take up accessory slots and vice versa. So they turn into accessory/arcane slots. That could be cool. When the game begins, yada yada yada, put it into play. A lot of the tarot cards have that clause. And now we'll take a look at our new Sign Magic. Sign Magic, 3 cost to play. You get a Will and a Lore on Commit. None of the neutral cards had Commit icons. Fast, you have 1 additional arcane slot which can only be used to hold a spell or ritual asset. As a reaction, after you activate an action ability on a spell or ritual card, exhaust Sign Magic, activate an action ability on a different spell or ritual asset you control without paying the action cost. So if you have a spellcaster who's got a lot of arcane slots that they're using, this is something you can use to just chain a bunch of them, to chain a couple of them together. That actually might be really good in Akachi now that I think about it. But anyway, that will do it for the Mystic cards. Now let's take a look at the Guardian cards. Here are our Guardian cards. First up, we'll take a look at an upgraded copy of Hallowed Mirror. Still the same 2 cost to play, 3 experience, 2 Will on Commit. Still limit 1 per deck, you have the same forced icon, but the reaction, when you play a copy of Soothing Melody, either change each 2 on it to 3, or shuffle it into your deck instead of discarding it. Ooh, that actually might be good in Parallel Agnes, where she can actually shuffle it, at least my build of Parallel Agnes, where I've got the Arcane Initiate in there, so I can theoretically just play it and then shuffle it back in to rip it back out more easily. Then of course Guardian also, actually every class got a new tarot, so let's take a look at Guardian's new tarot. The Star 18, you have been chosen. 3 cost to play, 3 experience. Each asset you control with health gets +1 health and +1 sanity. And when the game begins, yada yada yada. Seems like it would be really good in Tommy, who does a lot with his assets biting it. But anyway, that will do it for Guardian. Now let's take a look at the new Seeker cards. Here we have the new Seeker cards. Similar to with Hallowed Mirror, the Occult Lexicon also got an upgrade as well. Still limit 1 per deck, still forced to search for copies of Bloodright, and then similar to the Soothing Melody upgrade on Hallowed Mirror, Occult Lexicon lets you do the same thing with copies of Bloodright. Either change a 2 to a 3 or shuffle it back into your deck instead of discarding it. And Seeker's new tarot is the World 21. The Journey is complete. 3 cost to play, 3 experience. By the way, I did forget to mention, Occult Lexicon has 2 lore icons on Commit. As a fast action, if you have 8 or more cards in hand, exhaust the World 21 to draw 1 card. When the game begins, yada yada yada. Seems like at first glance this is going to be good for any Seeker who draws a lot of cards, especially Harvey. Harvey draws a lot of cards. But anyway, that will do it for the new Seeker cards. Now let's take a look at the new Rogue cards. Alright, let's take a look at our new Rogue cards. Looks like we're getting a new Well Connected. Well Connected level 3, 2 cost to play. Got a lore and an agility on Commit. Limit 1 per investigator. As a fast action, exhaust Well Connected. You get +1 skill value for this test per 4 resources you have. As a fast action, you can spend 2 resources, ready Well Connected, but you can only do that once per round. So you can essentially use the effect twice per round. And then Rogue's new tarot is Knight of Swords. When you succeed at a skill test, you get +1 skill value for this test. You may discard Knight of Swords to get +3 instead. Then when the game begins, yada yada yada. So if you need to bump up the skill value you succeed by, that can be a very handy way to do that. But that will do it for the rogue cards. Now last up, let's take a look at the survivor cards. Here we have our Survivor cards. So first up, we'll take a look at Survivor's non-tarot new card, Trial by Fire level 3. 2 costs to play, 2 wildcard icons on commit. Fast, play only during your turn. Until the end of your turn, set the base value of each of your skills to 5, or the base value of one of your skills to 7. And then the flavor text on here, the only card on here to have flavor text. You never really know what you are capable of until something is trying to eat you. Yikes. And then Survivor's new tarot. 9 of Rods. Every trial a lesson. As a reaction, when you draw a non-weakness encounter card, exhaust 9 of Rods, cancel all of that card's effects and shuffle it into the encounter deck. Then draw another card from the top of the encounter deck. Reaction when the game begins, yada yada yada. This is something I actually wish any of my canceling mystics could take. But I don't think any of them splash high enough into Survivor to get that. So that looks like that's going to be a Survivor exclusive toy. But that will do it for this product unboxing. Next week we're going to debut the last big board game in the files, in the Arkham files, on the channel when we play Eldritch Horror. The only spoiler I'll give about that video as of now is I expect it to at least be a 2-part video. Thank you for watching this video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.